We are currently in Amsterdam because our original flight from Detroit to Boston was delayed to the point where we had to change flights. So we're here in Amsterdam, waiting for our next flight from here to Dublin.
Take that into consideration.
The parsonage was built in
Patiently waiting.
Picking our tulips.
There you go.
Live long and prosper.
We're now in Dublin, and this is a house of prayer. Near Belfast, Jonathan Swift saw the outline in the mountains of a man's head and him lying down, giving him the idea for the story of Gulliver's Travels, which he wrote in 1726. Queen Victoria. We're in Belfast, inside the city hall. Several of the stained glass windows. Tomorrow. Prince of Orange or King William III in the Battle of the Boyne with James II. The battle cry was, "Let ambition fire thy mind." Glasses up.
Glasses up.
No food, that's another glitch for the evening. Make sure we got everybody, I think. Belfast again, Victorian city, became very large from 1830 to 1900 under Queen Victoria. The city hall that's right here was completed in 1903, took 7 years to complete. This is in honor of Frederick Temple. That part of the statue demonstrates his part of colonialism, governor general. This side shows him being the ambassador to Russia during the Tsar era. This part demonstrates his being the Viceroy of India. Part of the memorial gardens memorializing the Battle of 1916, which was a July 1st, World War I, in which 6,000 died in one day. Coat of arms of Belfast, the Latin words mean, "For that we have received, what can we give in return?" Statue commemorating Eisenhower being here, World War II. The soldiers, 270,000, practiced here in Belfast, and then D-Day took place on June the 5th. The memorial to those who died in the Titanic was put here, 100th anniversary of the sinking. 1,517 or so of those individuals are listed in alphabetical order. The Titanic was built in 1911, funded by J.P. Morgan, who wasn't on the original voyage. The murals on these walls depict different conflicts within our world today and stress the need for unity in our time. This wall was built to stop individuals from throwing Molotov cocktails at each other. Still remains today. The Albert Memorial Clock is situated in Queen's Square in Belfast and was built in 1869.
This was the first class tender ship. In those days, remember I told you when Titanic was built, it was a technological marvel, and most of the ports in the world could not accept in Titanic because it wasn't deep enough, it wasn't big enough. So you used tender ships like this to carry first class passengers out into deeper waters where they could alight on the Titanic.
Those pylons are where the Titanic, as well as the Olympic were built side by side. The third one was the Britannic. It's the Titanic Museum. This area is very important port of Belfast, very important port of Ireland. Studio of the Game of Thrones in Belfast, Ireland. This is the seat of government in Northern Ireland. Opposite this building is a statue of Lord Carson, a leader of the Irish Unionist Alliance and Unionist Party. He was opposed to the Home Rule for Ireland at the beginning of the 20th century. St. Patrick's Centre in Downpatrick, Ireland. These are Roman coins from the time of Patrick in 420 AD. At that time, the island known today as Ireland was not known as Ireland. Now, Patrick was a slave there on that particular island. He escaped and went 200 some miles, saw the vision, and God eventually led him to go to back to this island to bring Christianity. He arrived on this island. It was a pagan island, and there was starvation that was there, and the Druid gods didn't provide food, but Patrick prayed to God, and pigs were there, and then they wanted to learn more about the Christian God, Christ. The Confession of St. Patrick is the first known writing establishing Ireland, and is therefore the beginning of the mission to bring Christ to this particular part of the world. The exterior of Down Cathedral. It's a burial place of St. Patrick. Walkway outside of the church going to St. Patrick's grave. Burial place of St. Patrick. You can see
No, it doesn't say. It was
there.
found around there.
Celtic cross.
You see that one?
He was born in Britain and was the patron saint of Ireland. The St. Patrick cross, which combines the circle as well as the cross of Christ. Circle being representing one of the symbols of the Druids, and St. Patrick wanted to bring unity as he shared the message of Christ. In Carnlough, Ireland, in World War II, pigeons were used by the forces as message carriers. Patty was one of 30 pigeons delivered and utilized there. Game of Thrones, part of it was filmed in this area.
The little twin villages of Cushendall and Cushendon.
This is the rope bridge. They'd go salmon fishing, or poach salmon fishing, and then utilize that bridge to get back onto the mainland. As was mentioned before, or the salmon would go between where that rope bridge is down there. That's where they would poach them. The walkway down to the giant causeway.
That's neat. Take a picture of you guys over there. You don't even have to go very far.
Make it close up here.
We're about ready to start our tour of Derry. This depicts the Bloody Sunday in 1960 when there were 14 individuals killed by the British paratroopers. In 1972, this area was bombed by the British. And these windows then were bombed out and were replaced. The statue of Queen Victoria, notice her hands are damaged and part of the statue is damaged, and you see shrapnel on the sides. That's a result of what took place in 1972 when the IRA bombed Guildhall.
As prisoners of war, Margaret Thatcher refused, and they went on hunger strike, and 10 of them starved themselves to death. Critically, Bobby Sands, of course, was elected as a member of Parliament in Westminster whilst he was starving himself to death, and that's why you'll often hear local historians referring to this period as the IRA, using the ballot box in one hand and the Armalite in the other. So now you can see from the 1980s this clear focus on
one of the walls, there are the walls around Derry. 1603, there was a 9-year war with King James I, and after that, the plantation system came up, and that system was of planting the people into areas. And so we had the Catholics, and then they had the Protestants, and they're separated. This wall then was built around the city. Children, there's 2 different types of school. It's the Catholic school and it's the Protestant school. And what our guide basically says, which makes sense, is the kids need to be together to get to know each other better instead of the segregation. The monument erected in memory of Reverend George Walker. The original, and then in 1973 the IRA destroyed that pillar that's there. Prentice Boys Memorial Hall, first Derry Presbyterian Church. Our guide basically said too that about 1 out of 3 of the signers of our Declaration of Independence were Irish, Scottish descent.
Thank you. Can I call you Queen Elizabeth?
Our guide said to Liz, "Could I call you Queen Elizabeth?" Our guide also said that after the war there was 0 unemployment, and then the Americans gradually left and became just a 30% unemployment in the 60s, and then that's when all this conflict came up again. The refurbishing of this was done by Catholics and Protestants working together to try to see how things were before. Said that the word eavesdropping, they'd stand underneath the roof there by the window, be open, and then those are called eaves, and eavesdropping, so that's where that originated from. The 2 pillars are to represent the thumbs of 2 people handshaking, therefore peace. This is on the opposite side of the Peace Bridge. Going through the Blue Stack Mountains.
local place getting Irish coffee.
only one in here, so move it around.
We're in Donegal.
Donegal.
Donegal with some Irish coffee.
So we load the shuttle over the far side here. This we handle here, you see there's a weight on it. So as they're pressing the pedals, and they have to keep in sync with that, they'll shoot across this weight and that will shoot the shuttle across here. So you can see the shuttle at the far side, and then they'll bring it over back on that. You have to keep the feet in rhythm, and you need to keep everything just needs to be coordinated. So they say a skilled weaver makes a good dancer, so we'll see Paul and Helen and his dancing.
The whole process.
Church of Ireland, Donegal Parish. It's the O'Donnell Castle, 1474. It was a very important castle in the 9 Years' War in the 1600s. It's been restored to the 17th century style. We're in the Tower House. It's also known as the Donegal Castle. This is a
Small room containing a wooden seat with a hole in it. Waste would flow, fall down. A chute built into the castle wall and into the pit in the ground below.
coming up a spiral staircase into what looks like the dining area. Then the next floor up, this would have shown the way it was during the 9 Years' War. Previous model was 1590. This model shows the way it was in the year 1650 with the Brooks.
This was the first floor.
You can see where the floors were here in this area.
Okay, Mike taking it easy on an old tree stump.
Bellic pottery or china. There are the big kilns. Some of the finished products. We are again in Northern Ireland. And across this bridge on the opposite side is the Republic of Ireland. This is the only flat top plateau in Ireland. It's known as Ben Baldwin. St. Columba's Parish Church of Drumcliff, in which William Buckley Yeats is buried. Burial plot of William Yeats. Yeats, that's his wife, Georgine. He always called her George. The memorial to Yeats. There was a statue here of him on his knees, but it was stolen. Little town where we had our lunch. This is where it is said an apparition of Mary, as well as Joseph, as well as John, came in 1879. Each cross was put up when Pope Paul II came in 1979 here, and was used again when Pope Francis came in 2018. These statues commemorate that aberration, they say, took place here that we mentioned earlier. The left was given in 1979 by Pope Paul II. The one on the right was given by Pope Francis in 2018, gifts to this particular basilica. This area of the Stations of the Cross. Then the basilica. On the walls are the Stations of the Cross. We continue our travels and we see here a fish farm and a fish house. On one side of the road would be saltwater fish, on the other side would be freshwater fish. We are in Calamar area at Clifton. We're making the figure 8 around that area from where we were before at Galway back to Galway. As we continue our travels, we see different types of landscape throughout our journey. Kylemore Abbey. Statue of Christ, it's 21 feet tall. It was put there by the Benedictine nuns, 1930.
You can see the way some of the floats haven't just gotten back into the water yet. They take one up at a time, put the previous one back into the water.
Across the way are those houses along that would be the Road of Sorrows during the time of the famine, which would be the 1840s. Individuals would be on that road going to try and get on a ship to go to the Americas or Canada or Australia. They die and on the road, skeletons. We are in a Irish pub, drinking Guinness and other beverages.
Can you cancel the purchase if you don't
In Galway, here in the center square, Kennedy's Memorial. Oscar Wilde.
Grab his crotch. Oh, yeah. Right.
You can move. This isn't a still shot, you know.
Oh, movie! Why did you say that?
Yeah, drink your beer. On Adair, and this is the washing pool, which is in the Adair Park. This gives you an idea of the thatched roofs. You can tell this is newer on the left because it's yellow. We're in Killarney. My princess. Mary's Protestant Church, Killarney. St. Mary's Protestant Church. St. Mary's Catholic Church, Killarney. Where this tree is, it's over a mass grave during the famine. It was planted as a very small tree at that time. The Killarney House and Exhibition. This telephone booth now is where a defibrillator, Christ the King statue. Welcome to the Carrybog Village. The Irish Wolfhound, the Puck Fair, takes place in August in this area, celebrating the goat.
Boy, that is a low chair.
I'll tell you a little bit about that a little bit. But
This is some of the bog that was used in the fires after it was dried out. On one side of this little cottage would have been the animals. The other side would have been the living area. This is a drinking house. Carrybog ponies. Bridget O'Shea's cottage. It's left after the 18th century. It was erected during the Great Famine of 1845 to 1853. Notice that there's no roof on it. That would be because it would have been made of wood. And when Cromwell came through, he would have burned, or the soldiers would have burned that instead of tearing down the stone walls. Making the Irish coffee.
Thank you.
Out at Dingle Bay.
These are Stanford just crossed the story here. They made it to Russell handmade.
As we go around the Ring of Kerry. Sandy is now getting some special illegal, we would call this moonshine. And he's hiding it.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to be arrested.
No, they
Oh.
would arrest.
Place of Daniel O'Connell, who was involved in the Catholic Emancipation of 1829.
Kept, and he found himself eventually in Newfoundland.
He's explaining how they get the peat out of the bog.
The sod turf with the two-sided spade. Now when they lift that out, it's heavy because it's about 85% water.
The view from where we're having lunch today on the Ring of Kerry.
Of course, for the 3 or 4 days that the ewes are all, because they all conceived around the same time, they all give birth around the same time. So for those 3 or 4 days, the farmers are particularly busy. They're not going to get much sleep. They're going to be out at night, making sure that the foxes and the badgers are not going to attack the lambs. Just excuse me.
Small gap down there would be the dark valley.
Golf shirt. Oh, I just thought maybe you might have the golf shot.
Ladies' view, these are the lakes of Killarney as we're coming into the Killarney National Forest. Some ladies' view, the lakes of Killarney. Our group in a jaunt for the night. We're going to Ross Castle. Is that what it was?
Barely got Liz, but we got her. That's here right there.
Personally, I got the five really good, but then I'm not sure about the
Killarney National Park.
We have
Leprechaun tree. The opening that's there. The brown trout in here. You said it was 5 miles.
5 miles long, 3 miles wide. Salmon and trout lake. The Atlantic salmon come into the lake through the River Lown that drains it into the Atlantic Ocean. 40 years ago,
Killarney Park.
He bought it in 1960. Right through the woods. It was a lime kiln. Before we had cement for sticking the blocks together, they had to depend on the limestone on the right. The fruit was easily break it down into powder, and they just add water to the powder, then you make up the paste. They're very fast flyers, those teal. They can fly at 120 miles per hour.
Oh, wow, their feet are very...
Killarney Castle. Yeah. Way up here is where you kiss the stone. Right up in that area. No one is there yet. Kind of tight quarters, huh, John?
Yep, hang on for dear life.
Oh, that's easy. Okay. Yeah. I'm not close enough. Okay. I'll do that. There we go.
I can't get that.
I know. I was having a hard time getting it.
I think that's good enough. No, I'm not going to get up.
You could just lie back if you want to.
I don't want to be in your picture, so let me know.
Okay.
The murder hole.
Kapush.
They have a stone above this and then they pour the tar down. This is the Blarney House, which is privately owned. Going into the cave. The Badger's Cave.
At the cave.
Badger's
Cave. Go ahead.
We're on the River Walk by Blarney Castle. Sisters. Then King Munster went to a battle and he had 7 daughters and 2 sons, and you'll notice 2 of these are turned over. Those were the 2 sons. They died when he returned. Largest Irish shop in the world. Blarney Woolen Mills. 3 stories. Of Cashel, we may not see it because Prince Charles and Camilla are there currently for our evening meal and entertainment. Our group.
Here we go. You ready? Yes.
He's practicing.
Wait a minute. Take a deep breath. Okay. I'm not a plucker's son. A plucker. I'm not a pheasant plucker. I'm a pleasant fucker's son. Plucking feathers until the pheasant comes.
Trinity College was established in 1592. It's one of the 3rd level education institutions. Trinity College. The Book of Kells was written 800 years ago by the Columban monks. It took it 70 years to write. It's a Latin version of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Book of Kells was written, put together 800 AD. Building of this long room was begun in 1712. It took 20 years for it to build and now is known as the greatest room in Ireland, which is right above where the Book of Kells is kept. Brian Boral harp, the oldest Irish harp in Ireland. It's a symbol of Ireland. A facsimile of the Book of Kells in the library. Samuel Beckett Bridge in the shape of an Irish harp. The Customs House of Dublin, Ireland. A replica of the Jenny Johnson, built in 1848, carried 2,500 Irish immigrants on 16 transatlantic voyages to North America throughout the famine years. The government buildings, built in 1801. St. Patrick's Cathedral, it's an Anglican church currently in Dublin. In 1492, there was the Butlers and the Fitzgeralds, and the Butlers came into this cathedral. Fitzgerald put a hole in the door, stuck his hand in as if to make peace, and that's where the phrase "chant your arm" came into being, where you shake hands or cut your arm off. This is known as the Door of Reconciliation. The spiral staircase leads to the organ loft, which has one of the largest organs in Ireland. Jonathan Swift was the dean here from 1713 to 1745. He preached 4-hour sermons. He preached a sermon on sleeping because the parishioners would fall asleep. He also was the one that wrote Gulliver's Travels. The only stone in the Gaelic language, first president of Ireland. In 1860 to 1865, there was a restoration of St. Patrick's Cathedral by the Guinness family. There are over 600 individuals buried in and around this cathedral. Records go back to 1666. Touring Guinness Brewery.
Parents had a deal in many cases to grandparents. Pubs and part of characteristic bedrooms that Guinness.
The hops. The hop plant can grow to an astonishing 15 feet in height. Now in the presence of a natural treasure, Arthur's Heath.
Still, when you're 50 years, the brewery is working its life. Bringing 100, they were shipping out 1 million barrels a year.
We've been working with Irish barley farmers and maltsters for generations.
Begin by adding famous yeast. In 1959, Guinness was the first brewer to introduce nitrogen into beer. 30 million tiny gas bubbles.
in a few moments, right? So guys, as everyone's coming into the room, you're very welcome to the Velvet Chamber, okay?
Different advertising, Whistling Oyster.
Michael's holding on to a large beam. He's holding it up and it's getting heavy for him. Say something.
I gotta let go.
Okay.
A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle.